couple of weeks, I was in a pilgrimage in Rome with Frassati High School. And one of the places that we got a chance to visit was Assisi. And it's incredible how you're moved with just the holiness that is sensed in the place itself, a place that's sanctified by St. Francis of Assisi and the saint we celebrate today, St. Clare, this young lady that was so moved by this extreme poverty that she herself gave everything up to begin the women's branch that followed St. Francis's way of life. And that idea of poverty, the poverty that doesn't necessarily just speak into a material, like in having nothing, materially speaking. In the gospel, the Lord shows us this very important relationship that we do have with physical resources, with money. So whenever we speak of this poverty, the Lord speaks of this poverty, it goes deeper than that. Because you can be extremely rich and make it to heaven, and you can be extremely poor and not. So it goes deeper than just having the stuff. It all comes down to the disposition of your heart and where your heart rests. Some of us are called to extreme poverty, both in our hearts, spiritually speaking, but also physically. And there's where we get the examples of St. Francis and St. Clare. But most of us can't live that way because we have families, we have kids, we have homes, we have to take care of our responsibilities as good citizens. So how do we practice this gospel poverty that the Lord calls us to? How it is that we can own these things and not be owned by them? How can we have home and goods and not let them have that handle over our hearts, our minds, our souls, to the point where we live for these things, as opposed to living for the Lord and having these things help us along the way? The idea of poverty is to have an undivided heart that is given completely to the Lord, because if our hearts are filled with love for these things, there will be no space for love of God. And so our minds and our time and our worries will be focused on all these things that become our idols, that become our gods. And there's where we enter into idol worship. We don't necessarily have to be standing before a pagan statue to be idolaters. We just have to have some other thing, some other person in our life that is more important than God. Gospel poverty is not having anything. Necessarily. Some of us are called to that. Gospel poverty is to come to a point where we'll have things, but we know who our God is. We know who we are made for. We know who we live for. And that when it comes down to making a decision, He's the one that guides our decisions, our way of life, our actions, our words, our relationships, and not the things that we own.